The obvious thing to do is to convert dollars that are being inflated at, expanded to 15% a year into a scarce digital asset. And that's what Bitcoin is. Well, I think in the current macroeconomic environment, most corporations are beginning to realize that their cash is going to be a depreciating asset, and they need to turn their balance sheet into an appreciating asset. So Elon Musk is very progressive and Tesla is very progressive. I think this is part of a trend toward the digital transformation of balance sheets as people move from analog, traditional treasury assets like cash and bonds into Bitcoin. Well, I mean, the pitch is Bitcoin is digital gold, and it's sitting on the world's first digital monetary network. That network does the job of gold 1,000,000 times better than gold. You can move it at the speed of light. You can program it 1,000,000 times a second. And it's been appreciating versus the US dollar more than 200% a year on average for a decade. So I think at this point, Bitcoin has emerged as the institutional safe haven asset. If you're a corporation and you generate $1 billion in cash flow and you buy back your stock, you're $1 billion closer to insolvency. If you borrow $1 billion to buy back your stock, you're $2 billion closer to insolvency. If you want to run your company to the benefit of your shareholders, of your customers, of your employees, and of your local community over the long run, you can't decapitalize the company. And in the modern era, cash is becoming a liability because the money supply is expanding at 15% and the purchasing power of the cash keeps degrading. Holding a 15% degrading asset for 8 years means you lose 75% of shareholder value. So the pitch is convert your balance sheet from a liability into an asset to the benefit of your stakeholders and use the world's first digital monetary network to do it. Bitcoin was engineered to do this. Well, I think there's been a great advance in regulatory clarity over the past few years. I think the IRS and the SEC have both designated Bitcoin as property, and I think that's been very good for the asset class. I think that we can expect a few more regulatory advances that'll provide more clarity, and as Bitcoin approaches regulatory parity with other types of assets like stocks and bonds and gold, I think it's going to remove the few remaining barriers that have given institutions pause. I think 1,000 institutions, 1,000 corporations started adopting Bitcoin as an asset for investment in the past 12 months. I think there'll be an avalanche of thousands more that'll be coming as they start to see that this is a very high quality treasury reserve asset on parity with other assets. Well, I don't think Bitcoin is going to take on the US dollar. I think that cryptocurrency is a misnomer. Bitcoin's digital gold. What Bitcoin is doing is rapidly replacing gold as a non-sovereign store of value. We've already got something on the order of 120 to 150 million people in the world using Bitcoin as digital gold. I think that number is going to rapidly march through 200 million, and we'll have 1 billion people that want to hold digital gold on a mobile device in the next 5 years. So when you think about it, I think the right way to think of it is I want to convert my long-term treasury reserves into something which is 1,000,000 times better than gold that moves at the speed of light. And it doesn't matter if you're a company or you're an individual or an institutional investor. They all have the same problem, which is how do I preserve my monetary energy over long periods of time? Expenditures day to day that you would normally do in dollars, people will continue to do in dollars. The payment rails are going to be MasterCard and Visa and PayPal and Square Cash. The euro and the dollar are going to do just fine. I think that the people that ought to be really concerned are gold bugs. Anybody that's storing their money in gold is got a big bullseye on their forehead, and that's at risk. I think the millennials, they discover things quickest. I mean, it was college students that found Facebook, but eventually everybody joined Facebook. I think it was 20-somethings that loved texting on mobile phones, but eventually Warren Buffett bought Apple stock. I think that millennials love Bitcoin because it's digital gold, and there's no way that 100 million people can buy a bar of gold through their mobile phone, but they are buying digital gold on Square Cash or PayPal or the like. But having said it all, they're just the vanguard. Eventually, the entire society is going to buy this. Institutions are coming into it. The Generation Xers are coming into it. And so it's an idea whose time has come. The millennials are leading the way.
Now, this news that has just come out in the last 24 hours regarding BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager with $8 trillion, not billion, trillion dollars under management, are beginning to invest and dabble in Bitcoin. This news hasn't been digested yet by the market, and this is extremely bullish for Bitcoin for 2021. Watch this clip of their managing director and chief investment officer and pay attention to his body language. He can barely contain his smile as he talks about BlackRock beginning to dabble in Bitcoin. Just how much have they been buying up?
So Bitcoin bulls say 1%. Even just as a hedge against money printing, put 1% into Bitcoin. I'm trying to figure out what 1% of 7 trillion would mean for Bitcoin. That would be. What are you doing? Are you doing anything? Are you recommending anything? What's BlackRock got in the works for Bitcoin? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think crypto is generally has gotten the imagination of a lot of people. I mean, having, today the volatility of it is extraordinary, but listen, people are looking for storehouses of value. People are looking for places that could appreciate, under the assumption that inflation moves higher and the debts are building. So we've started to dabble a bit into it, and I wouldn't put a number on the percentage allocation one should have. It depends on what the rest of your portfolio looks like. But listen, I think you talked about one of your shows. My sense is the technology has evolved and the regulations have evolved to the point where a number of people find that it should be part of the portfolio, and so that's what's driving the price up.
Can you speak to BlackRock's eventual plans? What would you be recommending? You're not as old as Mellon. You got a lot more money, but that's one of the oldest banks around. They saw fit to make a comment. What do you think will happen down the road?
So, I mean, I'm not in a position to make recommendation on that. So, listen, I think some people holding it as a storehouse of value and diversifying your portfolio. Listen, the one thing I've owned, and I think somebody said it on one of the show I was on with you guys recently. We're holding a lot more cash than we've held historically. It's because duration doesn't work, interest rates don't work as a hedge, and so diversifying into other assets makes some sense. And so, holding some portion of what you hold in cash and things like crypto is, seems to make some sense to me. But I wouldn't espouse a certain allocation or target holding.